Today we are addressing Germany's foreign policy in the next 4 years. As you may know, Germany has established a new coalition and they will be sworn as a new government in December. The government includes the Social Democratic Party, the Greens, and the Free Democratic Party. And they were negotiating in the past weeks in order to finalize an agreement, a coalition agreement between them to specify the policies of Germany in terms of the domestic policy, security, migration, environment, and also foreign policy, right? I have taken a look this document, which is in German, and I translated the foreign policy part into English, and I summarized what we need to know about this. But spoiler alert, despite my attempt to summarize it, there are things that you cannot really cut off. So we will go through them. It will not be the shortest video, and I'm sure the followers of Syriana Analysis, they want quality information and not something fast. So let's begin with the UN. The coalition says that they're committed to strengthening the UN as the most important institution of the international order, politically, financially, and in terms of personnel. Reform of the UN Security Council remains our goal, as does fairer representation of all world regions. You already know the UN Security Council has 5 permanent members, 3 of them are from the West, and you have China and Russia. So they claim that they're advocating for a reform that could include other powers or other regions. We support and strengthen initiatives such as the Alliance of Democracies, and we are continuing to develop the Alliance of Multilateralism. We are also working to strengthen multilateralism through the G7 chairmanship. They specify G7 and not G8. We want Germany to invest 3% of its GDP, gross domestic product, in international action in the long term, in the spirit of a networked and inclusive approach, thus strengthening its diplomacy and development policy and fulfilling the commitments it has made in NATO. Together with our partners, we want to strengthen the rights, resources, and representation of women and girls worldwide and promote social diversity in the spirit of a feminist foreign policy. We want to send more women to international leadership position, so gender identity. We pursue a policy of disarmament in the digital space. This includes stopping the transfer of surveillance technologies to repressive regimes and protecting civilian infrastructure from cyber attacks. NATO remains an indispensable foundation of our security. We are committed to strengthening the transatlantic alliance and sharing the burden fairly. We are actively engaged in the process of developing a new strategic concept to address NATO's new challenges. As long as nuclear weapons play a role in NATO's strategic concept, Germany has an interest in participating in strategic discussions and planning processes. Against the background of the continuing threat to the security of Germany and Europe, we take the concerns of our Central and Eastern European partner states in particular seriously. We are committed to maintaining a credible deterrent potential and want to continue the alliance's dialogue efforts. Now, the next part is about the weapons and exports of weapons. Let's go through Germany's weapon policy. We want a disarmament policy offensive and want to play a leading role in strengthening international disarmament initiatives and non-proliferation regimes, including the Stockholm Initiative for Nuclear Disarmament. We will work to ensure that the 2020 Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT, review conference provides real impetus for nuclear disarmament. Our goal remains a world free of nuclear weapons, global zero. And as a result, a Germany free of nuclear weapons. As you may know, the United States has nuclear weapons in Germany. So are they like referring to the United States? They don't really specify here also. We strongly advocate a follow-up agreement to New START that includes not only new strategic nuclear weapon systems, but also those of short and medium range. We advocate negotiations between the US and Russia for complete disarmament in the sub-strategic area. We want to involve nuclear weapon states such as China more closely in nuclear disarmament and arms control. Later, they say we reject autonomous weapon systems that are completely beyond the control of humans. Maybe they are referring to AI. We actively promote their international outlawing. We will not issue any export licenses for military equipment to countries that are demonstrably directly involved in the war in Yemen. Obviously, they mean Saudi Arabia and probably the UAE, but they don't mention their names. Defense and the army. The Bundeswehr, which means the army, the German army, makes an essential contribution to the protection and defense of our country and our partners and allies. The mission and task of the Bundeswehr must be geared to the strategic challenges and security threats of our time. The Bundeswehr must be reliably equipped with the best possible personnel, material, and financial resources in line with its missions and tasks. Our soldiers make an indispensable contribution to international security. We are improving their equipment as well as that of the Bundeswehr. We are accelerating the modernization of the infrastructure. Armed drones can help protect soldiers on missions abroad, subject to binding and transparent conditions and taking ethical and security policy aspects into account. We will therefore allow the Bundeswehr to arm drones during this legislative period. I'm not sure if the government, the Merkel government gave a permission to use to arm drones, but this government says they will give permission to arm drones. But they also say when they are deployed, the rules of international law apply. We reject extralegal killings also by drones. We want to counter the new threats in cyberspace with an ambitious cybersecurity policy. The Bundeswehr must also be put in a position to successfully operate as a player in the cyber and information space in conjunction with other federal agencies. Parliamentary oversight of the Bundeswehr's use of cyber capabilities must be guaranteed. All members of the Bundeswehr must unequivocally stand on the basis of the free democratic basic order. We will adapt service and labor law to enable extremists to be dismissed from service immediately. They mean the right-wing extremists, because in the past few years the media has published a few investigations claiming that the right-wing extremists have infiltrated the German army. We are committed to Germany's role and responsibility for peace, freedom, and prosperity in the world. As a reliable partner in systems of collective security, we will stand by our foreign and security policy commitments. Nevertheless, any deployment of the Bundeswehr must be preceded by a critical analysis of the content and a review of the preconditions, as well as the development of possible exit strategies. For us, the use of military force is an extreme measure and must always be integrated into a realistic political approach to conflicts and their causes. Armed missions of the Bundeswehr abroad must be embedded in a system of mutual collective security based on the basic law and international law. We will ensure regular evaluation of ongoing missions abroad. We align our actions with the UN's Agenda 2030, with its Sustainable Development Goals and the value-based development policy. We are committed worldwide to sustainable development, the fight against hunger and poverty, climate justice, biodiversity, and the socio-ecological turnaround. We support the global COVID-19 vaccination campaign, COVAX, strengthening it financially and through rapid delivery of vaccines. We support voluntary production partnerships and the transfer of know-how to expand production capacities for medicines and vaccines worldwide. In this spirit, we are constructively engaging in the international debates on equitable vaccine supply. We strengthen the rights, representation, and resources of women, girls, and marginalized groups such as LGBTI. I think it's LGBTQ, right? I don't know. It's mentioned LGBTI. Equal political, economic, and social participation, the empowerment of sexual and reproductive health and rights of women and girls, and full access to equal education and healthcare are central to us. We will develop a comprehensive gender action plan with the participation of civil society and back it financially. Now, what is left is the most important part, because it mentions all the regions and most important conflicts and countries, and what the policy and how the policy of Germany will look like. The transatlantic partnership and friendship with the EU are a central part or a central pillar of our international action. We advocate a renewal and dynamization of transatlantic relations with the USA and Canada, which we want to shape in a European way. Together, we want to stabilize the rules-based international order, counter authoritarian developments, and step up cooperation in the EU's eastern and southern neighbor. The United Kingdom is one of Germany's closest partners outside the EU. A continued close partnership of the UK with the EU also enables the implementation of an ambitious agenda. We also want cooperation in foreign and security policy. We are working together with the EU and its member states to further develop the Eastern Partnership. States such as Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia, which aspire to join the EU, should be able to move closer through consistent rule of law and market economy reforms. We will react decisively and reliably to democratic upheavals and be part to the democracy movements. We want to facilitate civil society exchanges through targeted visas. So they want to give visa to targeted groups, but they don't mention which part. We will continue to support Ukraine in restoring its full territorial integrity and sovereignty. We aim to deepen the energy partnership with Ukraine with strong, ambitious, and renewable energy, green hydrogen production, energy efficiency, and CO2 reduction. We stand with the people of Belarus and support their desire for new elections, democracy, freedom, and the rule of law, and demand the unconditional release of all political prisoners. Russian interference in favor of Lukashenko is unacceptable. We will support the democratic opposition in Belarus through further offers. If Lukashenko doesn't decide to change course, we will seek to extend the existing EU sanctions in order to make it more difficult for the regime to access funding. German-Russian relations are deep and multifaceted. Russia is also an important international player. We recognize the importance of substantial and stable relations and continue to strive for them. We are ready for constructive dialogue. We address the interests of both sides on the basis of the principles of international law, human rights, and the European peace order, to which Russia has also committed itself. We respect the interests of our European neighbors, especially our partners in Central and Eastern Europe. We will take account of different threat perceptions and focus on a common and coherent EU policy towards Russia. We call for an immediate end to the destabilization attempts against Ukraine, the violence in eastern Ukraine, and the annexation of Crimea in violation of international law. The path to a peaceful resolution of the conflict in eastern Ukraine and the lifting of sanctions in this regard depends on the full implementation of the Minsk Agreement. We advocate the resolution of frozen conflicts in the region. We want to cooperate more closely with Russia on issues of the future, for example, hydrogen and health, and in addressing global challenges such as climate and environment. We strongly criticize the comprehensive restriction of civil and democratic freedoms and expect the Russian government to give civil society there the opportunity for unhindered contact with German partners and strengthen our commitment to support them. We want to create the possibility of visa-free travel from Russia to Germany for particularly important target groups, for example, young people under 25. Turkey remains, look the change of the tone now between Russia and Turkey. Turkey remains an important neighbor of the EU and a partner in NATO for us, despite worrying domestic political development and foreign policy tensions. The large number of people with biographical roots in Turkey creates a special closeness between our countries and is naturally part of German society. Democracy, the rule of law, and human, women's, and minority rights in Turkey have been massively eroded. We will therefore not close any chapter or open any new ones in the accession negotiations. We will breathe life into the EU-Turkey dialogue agenda and expand exchanges with civil society and youth exchange programs. Now, Israel. Israel's security is a matter of state for us. We will continue to work for a negotiated two-state solution based on the 1967 borders. That means Israel has to withdraw from the territories it has occupied after 1967 war and should dismantle the settlements, which of course Israel would never accept to do that. Anyhow, we condemn the continuing threat to the state of Israel and the terror against its population. We welcome the normalization of relations between other Arab states and Israel that has begun. We strongly oppose attempts at anti-Semitically motivated condemnations of Israel, including in the UN. Unilateral steps complicate peace efforts and must be avoided. We expect the Palestinian side to make progress on democracy, the rule of law, and human rights. This also applies to the renunciation of any form of violence against Israel. We call for a halt to the construction of settlements which is contrary to international law. They condemn violence from the Palestinians, but they call on Israel to dismantle the settlements. We want to initiate the establishment of a German-Israeli youth organization. We will continue to provide financial support to the UN Relief and Work Agency for Palestine Refugees, UNRWA, and support an independent monitoring process to counteract undesirable developments. Peace and stability in the Middle East are part of our central interests. We want to exploit the potential of Germany's and the EU's cooperation with the region and among states in the region themselves. We support efforts in the region to enable greater political and economic participation by the population, especially women and young people. We continue to promote democratic transformation processes in Europe's southern neighbors. In addition, technological innovations in the region are to be promoted through climate partnerships with selected partners. We are committed to a swift conclusion of the nuclear negotiations with Iran and expect all signatory states to implement the agreement. Iran must return to full and lasting compliance with its obligations to the International Atomic Agency. We expect the Iranian government to significantly improve the precarious human rights situation and release all political prisoners. The threat to the state of Israel, the missile program, the aggressive regional policy and armament, and the support for terrorist activities pose a massive threat to peace and security. Together with our partners in the Gulf, we want to promote confidence-building measures and support the rapprochement processes that have begun. We are working to contain the humanitarian disasters in Syria and Yemen and are continuing our humanitarian aid at a high level. We are actively supporting the UN-led peace processes of this conflict. This includes documenting, processing, and prosecuting war crimes. We are committed to stabilizing Libya within the framework of ongoing UN efforts and the Berlin process. We want to make our contribution to the stabilization of Iraq. Germany will continue its commitment to the people of Afghanistan. We link the recognition of the government, they mean the Taliban government, to its inclusiveness and to the preservation of human rights. In particular, we will work for women's and girls' rights and for the protection and reception of those who are endangered by past cooperation with us. We will provide financial and human resources support to UN implementing agencies to prevent a humanitarian disaster. Let's move to Africa. We have Africa, China, and Asia, and Latin America, lastly. African states and Europe have historically been closely linked. For the future, we are striving for a close partnership with Africa at all levels, bilateral and within the framework of a coherent EU-Africa strategy. We are expanding our cooperation with the African Union and the African regional organizations. Peace, security, prosperity, sustainable development, health, combating the consequences of the climate crisis, and strengthening multilateralism are focus points of our cooperation. We are cooperating to promote EU-Africa connectivity, especially in digitalization, energy, and infrastructure, and are expanding science cooperation. We want to work to ensure that the African Free Trade Area helps build sustainable value chains. We support Africa's strengthening in regional and global economic exchange. We provide support in particular where a reform agenda for democracy, human rights, and the rule of law is being pursued. To this end, we will continue to engage in the G20 Compact with Africa. We will continue to engage in the Sahel region to prevent the spread of instability. We will continue to provide support in the area of civilian stabilization measures within the framework of the Partnership of Security and Stability as part of the Coalition for the Sahel, and adapt it in line with new needs and the political constitution of the individual states. We expect the Malian transition government to adhere to the agreed transition roadmap. China. We want to and must shape our relations with China in the dimensions of partnership, competition, and system rivalry. On the basis of human rights and applicable international law, we seek cooperation with China wherever possible. We want fair rules of the game in the increasing competition with China. In order to be able to realize our values and interests in the systematic rivalry with China, we need a comprehensive China strategy in Germany within the framework of the joint EU-China policy. We want to continue the intergovernmental consultations and make them more European. We strive for close transatlantic coordination in China policy and seek cooperation with like-minded countries to reduce strategic dependencies. Our expectations of Chinese foreign policy is that it play a responsible role for peace and stability in its neighborhood. We are committed to resolving territorial disputes in the South and East China Seas based on international maritime law. Any change in the status quo in the Taiwan Strait must be peaceful and mutually agreed upon. Within the framework of the EU's One China policy, we support the relevant participation of democratic Taiwan in international organizations. We clearly address China's human rights violations, especially in Xinjiang. They mean with the Uyghurs. The principle of one country, two systems in Hong Kong must be reasserted. Building on the Indo-Pacific strategies of China and the EU, we are committed to a free and open Indo-Pacific region based on global norms and international law. We want to achieve progress in cooperation, particularly in the areas of strengthening multilateralism, the rule of law and democracy, climate protection, trade and digitalization. We want to jointly promote an intensive dialogue on peace and security in the Indo-Pacific region. We want to drive forward the EU-ASEAN partnership. We want to politically upgrade the Asia-Pacific Conference of German Business. We want to drive forward the expansion of our relations, including at parliamentary level, with important value partners such as Australia, Japan, New Zealand, and South Korea. With Japan, we want to begin regular government consultations. We have an outstanding interest in deepening our strategic partnership with India through the implementation of the Indo-German Partnership Agenda and the EU-India Connectivity Partnership. In particular, those who are and will be affected by rising sea levels deserve our increased support. We want to actively advocate infrastructure development in line with high-quality international standards. The EU's Global Gateways initiative is an important instrument in this. And finally, we want to strengthen our community of values with the democracies of the Latin America and Caribbean region. Building on the Latin America and Caribbean initiative, Germany will expand its engagement to strengthen the region's societies in their fight against populism, authoritarian movements, and dictatorships. Reconciliation and peace processes within the continent's states deserve our support. We will see the states of the region as key partners for multilateral cooperation, including in preserving biodiversity, combating the climate crisis, and sustainable economic relations. So, this was a summary, just a summary. We have like more of them here, but this is what I summarized, the most important parts of the foreign policy of, or the expected foreign policy of Germany in the upcoming 4 years. And I think they have mentioned most of the important parts, regions in the world and the conflicts. Surprisingly, they didn't go or analyze in deep the situation in Syria. They say they want to contain the situation, the humanitarian situation in Syria. We hope that Germany would play a more constructive role in ending the conflict and not only containing the humanitarian situation and finding a political solution to the Syrian crisis. I wanted to make this video because in Syrian analysis, as I told you before, I'm not only committed in addressing the Syrian case, but also like in Europe, in Asia, the Ukraine, Armenia, Nagorno-Karabakh, and a lot of geopolitical conflicts. And I think it's also I hope it's important for you to like take a look and listen Germany's expected foreign policy in the coming years. I've been your host, Kevork Almassian of Syriana Analysis. If you like the content of my channel, please consider subscribing and hit the like button. It helps me with the algorithm of YouTube. And if you want to support Syriana Analysis financially, you can become a patron, the link in the description below, and see you next time.